Good evening, welcome. I'm Adam Gordon. I'm acting head of school here and also head of executive education. They say that reputation is a hard thing to acquire and a very easy thing to lose. This event comes at a time when business schools have to demonstrate their relevance. Business schools are an interesting kind of a place because they operate in that, if I may call it, liminal zone between education and research and the real world. And this topic of corporate and national reputation is one of those direct areas where, in fact, we've got the research and we've got the real world, and they come together, and this is what the Reputation Institute is doing.
Then we have a very distinguished panel today. Miller Motola from BrandSA is here. Vuyo Mahlati, president of the International Women's Forum in South Africa and a member of the National Planning Commission. Thanks for joining us. We have Gert de Beer, who is a partner for strategy and innovation at Deloitte. Thank you for joining us.
And Reputation Institute conducts a study every year, and we call it the Country RepTrak. And we look at the reputation of 50 different countries, including South Africa. And we ask respondents in the G8 countries to do this rating and give us their sense of how they rate the different countries. So we decided, let's do two studies. Let's do a study that we've done at the beginning of the year, and let's do a subsequent study later in the year to see if there has been a change in our reputation between the time when we have major upheavals and when we had a relatively quiet period in the country, and see how we are rated by people in the G8. The study in South Africa, what we also did was we looked at a small sample of South Africans to ask them how they feel about South Africa. An important question to ask is, why does this matter? Why should we be interested in a country's reputation? And our research has showed us that reputation is important for several reasons. One of them being this: your country's reputation heavily influences your ability to draw people who want to come and visit your country. What you see there is, we say reputation drives willingness of people to invest, people to live in a country, work in a country, buy from a country, or study in the country, or importantly, visit that country. Let me just put that in a bit of context. So we're saying that reputation influences people's willingness to buy your products. This tells us that there was a 75 billion worth of influence, based on our country being what it is, of people to buy and use our products. There was 84 billion rands worth of tourists that came to our country because South Africa is what it is. This is how reputation translates into rands and cents. Internally, there was 101 billion rands that South Africans were willing to spend within South Africa. So reputation has a direct bearing, economic bearing on the country and how we do as a country. So if it's that important, how do you measure it? And I heard someone ask us, so how do you guys actually do this? I mean, this is a very fuzzy type of touchy-feely thing. And the simplest way to think about it is this: if you think about how you feel about someone like Nelson Mandela, and I use him because it's a simple example to use. If you think about Nelson Mandela and how you feel about him and how you regard him, you really have a positive feeling about him and hold him in quite high esteem. And we admire Nelson Mandela and we trust him. And all of these together help us to build a reputation, and this is our emotional bond that we feel with him. South Africa's reputation is definitely impacted by those events that actually happen, that hit the international news media. In terms of a trend, what does this mean? We see that South Africa's reputation has been improving over this period under study. And what that says to us is, just looking at the G8 countries and how they see us, is they're seeing us better and better each year. They are admiring us, trusting us, holding us in high esteem, and the question is this: how are we then seeing ourselves? A large number of the people that we spoke to rated South Africa very poorly. If you remember the score from the G8, it was 51 points. South Africans rated ourselves at 33. That is closer to the Iraqs at 21 than it is to the US. So as far as South Africans are concerned, we actually see ourselves being in an embattled state, which I'll talk about this in a later slide, but I think this is food for thought. If you think about how we see ourselves as being almost as bad as in Iraq. Whereas when other people are looking at us, they're saying, actually, you guys are doing pretty well. How do we compare to our compatriots in the BRICS countries? Interestingly, if you were to ask South Africans how they feel they compare to BRICS, I'm sure we would have actually put ourselves at the very end. The last thing that the study has told us is that our reputation is fragile. The things that we do, the things that we say, can damage our reputation quite significantly. As you saw when we did the study in the first part of the year, our reputation dropped from what it had been the previous year. But when the negative news stopped coming out of our country, our reputation actually improves. So there is quite a lot of work that we as South Africans need to engage in to drive our reputation up, if for no other reason other than that it drives economic benefit. We will see more tourists, we will see more exports, we will see more investment in our country. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I now have the honor to ask Mila Motola from BrandSA to address all of us as the keynote address speaker. Thank you very much.
I think the results that we have just seen are in many ways for us who are, dealing with these issues on a daily basis, an attestation to the fact that reputation is not so much about what you say, but it is about what you do. Post-1994, we had to start telling a new narrative about this country, that this is a democracy and that you should invest and it's a country that's open for business. And so the International Marketing Council of Brand South Africa was established at that time. And so you need to work with and through a host of stakeholders in the country to build that reputation. And that is what we do. We compete with a whole host of other nations for investment, for trade, for tourism, and even for talent. So if people have to make decisions about, for an example, an employment decision, so we have an infrastructure build program which is going to contribute significantly to our economic base, but also contribute to our competitiveness and the ability of us to grow the economy. And these are the things, the signs that people read. So there might be stories that you tell, but it's the signs of what actions a country is taking that people focus upon. And we look forward to the next report, but more importantly, we look forward to increased support for those elements that will help build the reputation of our country. And for us, one of those is the National Development Plan. I thank you.
Briefly introduced the panelists earlier, but maybe I can just repeat that briefly. You've now obviously met Mila Motola from BrandSA, Gert de Beer from Strategy and Innovation at Deloitte, and Vuyo Mahlati, President of the International Women's Forum, and a member of the National Planning Commission.
When countries are grappling to catalyze economic recovery and surface themselves, for us to be sort of viewed in that light is something very positive, particularly from a G8 perspective. We are having a challenge in terms of how do we deal with the local perceptions which actually overshadow the gains but are real in terms of what people feel, but on the other side building on the positive that we are beginning to experience globally.
It's for us very clear that there's a big attractiveness conversation around Africa and South Africa. So I think when we talk about reputation, we should have a conversation around, well, the Africa reputation influence our reputation. So it's that choice. How will we choose to engage a solution revolution of where us as citizens, business, and civil society look less for government-led solutions, become part of that, but actively choose to be part of actioning which will change our reputation.
It's great for people who have your job that it seems like there is something we can do about our reputation, both that it's probably easier to build it than other country reputations, but it's also easier to destroy.
How do we use this reputational dividend to address the issues that we need to address as this talk of ensuring jobs, of ensuring that we address inequality and poverty. So what it does is it presents us with a very solid and story and narrative to put out there, whether it's in terms of trying to attract foreign direct investment or building on trade or attracting tourism. I think this is a story that is a very positive one if you consider what's happening globally in most of our traditional trading markets. So I would say we have a huge opportunity to leverage on the outcomes of these in a positive way to address domestically those issues that make South Africans themselves perhaps not rank themselves highly, or that make South Africans to take a less positive view of the reputation of the country.
The middle-aged part of the population had a much more negative outlook than the younger generation, which I think is really important to see. So it looks like the people who are younger, who look further into the future, have a much more positive outlook on South Africa than the people who are in the middle of their careers, have maybe only a few years to make something out of their lives in certainly the way that they see it. And that puts us in quite an interesting situation. So since at Reputation Institute we continue to preach that reputation is something that you build inside out, the question really is how can we all in our various sectors of activity take the lead to start to build our reputation further from inside out.
My personal focus is going to be how can I contribute to the education to the youth in this country, because the benefit, civil society and government will benefit from that, and I think that's where our investment should be as individuals. The rest we will do because of our day jobs, but when we go to bed at night we need to ask, are we doing about the youth the right things about the next generation? We can't let them be a lost generation.